Who? The A Method for Hiring by Geoff Smart and Randy Street. Picture this. Nate Thompson, CEO of SpectraLogic, staring at his phone on what's supposed to be a family ski trip. His wife and kids are outside in the fresh Vail powder, and he's stuck inside, practically chained to his laptop. For 4 hours every morning of their vacation, he's doing the work of people he hired, but really shouldn't have. Sound familiar? Here's the thing about Nate. He's brilliant. He's driven. He built his company from scratch. But he has one problem that's quietly destroying everything he's worked for. And it's not what you'd expect. It's not his strategy, not his product, not even his market. It's his people. Or as the authors of today's book would put it, he has a who problem. This book, Who? The A Method for Hiring, written by Geoff Smart and Randy Street, has become something of a secret weapon in the business world. It's sold millions of copies and been translated into dozens of languages. But here's what really matters. It's transformed the careers and fortunes of the people who actually use it. Smart and Street run a consulting firm called GHSMART, where they've spent decades advising billionaires and Fortune 500 companies on exactly one thing: how to make better people decisions. They've conducted over 1,300 hours of interviews, analyzed thousands of case studies, all to crack the code on hiring. And what did they discover? Your success in life, whether you're building a company, leading a team, or even just hiring a nanny, isn't determined by what you do. It's determined by who you have beside you. By the end of today's journey, you'll have a simple, practical framework that can save you millions of dollars, countless hours of frustration, and maybe, just maybe, give you back your vacations. This isn't just about hiring. It's about learning to see people for who they really are, and that's a skill that will serve you for the rest of your life. Remember that classic I Love Lucy episode? Lucy and Ethel are working at a candy factory, wrapping chocolates on a conveyor belt. At first, it's easy. But then, the belt speeds up. And speeds up again. Soon chocolates are flying past them, and they're stuffing them in their mouths, down their shirts, anywhere they can hide them. Then the supervisor walks in, sees an empty belt, and congratulates them on their great work. "Speed it up," she yells to someone in back. Now you could look at that situation and say the factory has a conveyor belt problem. A what problem? But that's not it at all. The supervisor had a Lucy problem, a who problem. This is the heart of the entire book. The most important decisions we ever make aren't about what we're going to do, but about who we're going to do it with. You can have the greatest strategy in the world, the most revolutionary product, but if you have the wrong people executing it, you're destined to fail. The reverse, also true. With the right people, even a mediocre strategy can turn to gold. Here's where it gets interesting. The legendary management guru Peter Drucker once estimated that managers have a hiring success rate of only 50%. Think about that. It's literally a coin flip. For every great hire, there's a disaster that costs a fortune. The authors' research found that the average hiring mistake costs 15 times the employee's salary. So someone making $100,000 who doesn't work out, that's a $1.5 million mistake. Nate Thompson, our CEO from earlier, estimated his early hiring mistakes cost his company as much as $100 million in lost value. And it's not just about money. It's the reason you can't sleep at night, the reason you can't take that vacation. So why are we so terrible at this? Why is hiring such a massive blind spot? The authors say it's because most of us practice what they call voodoo hiring. These are 10 common, gut-driven methods that feel right, but almost always lead to disaster. Let me introduce you to some characters you might recognize. There's the art critic. This manager thinks they can just read people. They trust their gut after a short chat. But here's the problem. Job candidates are great actors, and a short interview is their stage. Then you have the sponge. This person has everyone on the team interview the candidate, hoping to gather tons of information. But without a plan, everyone asks the same superficial questions. 6 different people might spend 10 minutes each asking about the candidate's skydiving hobby, and you learn nothing about whether they can actually do the job. There's the prosecutor, who tries to trip candidates up with trick questions. Why are manhole covers round? These questions might find you the cleverest person, but cleverness isn't the same as competence. On the flip side is the suitor, who spends the entire interview selling the candidate on the company without ever actually assessing them. They fall in love with the resume and forget to interview the person. As one CEO bluntly told a fired executive, "Look, I hired your resume. Unfortunately, what I got was you." And of course there's the animal lover, who relies on their favorite pet question. If you could be any animal, what would you be? The authors are clear. These questions are utterly useless. All of these voodoo methods share one fatal flaw. They assume that assessing a human being is easy. They rely on gimmicks, gut feelings, and shortcuts. But the truth is, it's hard to see people for who they really are. So what's the alternative? The authors present a simple 4-step process called the A method for hiring. The goal? Stop hiring B and C players and start consistently hiring A players. What's an A player? It's not just a superstar, it's the right superstar. The authors define it with mathematical precision. An A player is someone who has at least a 90% chance of achieving outcomes that only the top 10% of possible candidates could achieve. Let that sink in. You're not just looking for someone who can do the job. You're looking for someone who has a 90% chance of knocking it out of the park. The A method is the system for finding them. It has 4 steps: scorecard, source, select, and sell. Let's start with the first and perhaps most important step, the scorecard. Before you even think about looking for someone, you have to define what success looks like. The number one reason for hiring mistakes is being unclear about what you actually want the person to accomplish. A scorecard isn't a job description. Job descriptions are boring lists of activities and responsibilities. A scorecard is a blueprint for success. It has 3 parts: the mission, the outcomes, and the competencies. The mission is a short, simple summary of why the job exists. Not corporate gobbledygook, but plain language. For a vice president of sales, it might be, double our revenue in 3 years by signing large, profitable contracts with industrial customers. That's it. Everyone knows the goal. Next comes outcomes. This is where the magic happens. Outcomes are specific, measurable results the person must achieve. Instead of manage sales team, an outcome would be grow revenue from $25 million to $50 million by the end of year 3. Instead of oversee marketing, it's launch a new marketing campaign within 180 days that generates 1,000 new leads. Outcomes are powerful because they're objective. You either achieve them or you don't. This clarity does 2 things. First, it scares away B and C players who know they can't meet such a high bar. Second, it attracts A players who are hungry for a challenge and want to know exactly how they'll be measured. The third part is competencies. These describe how you expect the person to operate while achieving the outcomes. This is where you define behavioral and cultural fit. Competencies might include things like efficiency, honesty, persistence, or proactivity. But they also include cultural specifics for your team. If your company values collaboration, then teamwork is critical. If you're a fast-moving startup, adaptability is key. The authors found that 1/3 of hiring mistakes happen because of poor cultural fit. A brilliant salesperson who demoralizes the rest of the team is not an A player. The scorecard forces you to avoid a classic trap, hiring the all-around athlete. This is the candidate with the impressive resume who seems like they can do anything. But the truth is, most jobs don't need a generalist. They need a specialist. As Nick Shabraja, CEO of General Dynamics, said, success comes from having the right person in the right job at the right time with the right skill set for the business problem that exists. A scorecard forces you to define that specific problem so you can find the specific person to solve it. Once you have your scorecard, you're ready for step 2, source. Where do you find these A players? The authors are blunt. Posting job ads is terrible. It generates a tidal wave of resumes, but rarely the right ones. The single most effective method, mentioned by 77% of successful leaders they interviewed, is simple: referrals. Talented people know other talented people. The key is being systematic and relentless in asking your network for names. Patrick Ryan, founder of Aon Corporation, built a $13 billion company with a simple question he asks everyone he meets: who are the most talented people you know that I should hire? He doesn't just ask when he has an opening, he's always sourcing. He keeps a running list and makes it a habit to call a few new people every week just to build relationships. When a position opens up, he's not starting from scratch. He has a warm list of incredible candidates ready to go. Ask your customers, who are the best salespeople who call on you? Ask your suppliers, ask your partners, and most importantly, ask your own employees. Turn everyone on your team into a recruiter. At Geoff Smart, 80% of their new hires come from internal referrals. They even put sourcing on their employees' scorecards. Source X number of A-player candidates per year. The mindset shift is profound. Sourcing isn't a frantic one-time event. It's a constant, disciplined process of building a network of talent before you ever need it. Now you have a scorecard that tells you who you're looking for, and you've sourced a pool of promising candidates. You're ready for step 3, select. This is where you separate the real A players from the pretenders. The A method replaces voodoo hiring with 4 structured interviews, each building on the last, designed to gather facts, not feelings. The first interview is the screening interview. This is a short 30-minute phone call designed to weed out B and C players quickly. The goal is to save time. The authors provide 4 simple but powerful questions. 1. What are your career goals? You're listening for alignment with the role's mission. 2. What are you really good at professionally? You're listening for strengths that match the scorecard's outcomes. 3. What are you not good at or not interested in doing? You're looking for deal breakers and honesty. If they give a fake weakness like "I work too hard," you push back. 4. Who were your last 5 bosses, and how will they each rate your performance on a 1 to 10 scale when we talk to them? That last question is a truth serum. The phrase quote, 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 not if, signals that you will be checking, which compels honesty. You're looking for a pattern of 8s, 9s, and 10s. Anything less than a 7 is a red flag. The goal of this interview is to hit the gong fast. If it's not a clear fit, you end the process and move on. You only invite the strongest candidates to the next, most crucial interview. This is the Who interview. It's the heart of the A method. The Who interview is a chronological walkthrough of a person's entire career. It can take anywhere from 90 minutes to 5 hours, but the average is about 3. You go through every single job the candidate has held in the past 15 years, starting with the earliest one, and for each job you ask 5 questions. 1. What were you hired to do? This uncovers their original scorecard. 2. What accomplishments are you most proud of? You dig into these with follow-ups to see if they were truly significant. A players talk about outcomes they achieved. B and C players talk about activities they did. 3. What were some low points during that job? Everyone has lows. You keep pushing until you get the real story. 4. Who were the people you worked with? This is where you ask about their boss, their team, and you use what the authors call the threat of reference check, or TORC. You ask for their boss's name, have them spell it out, and then ask, what will your boss say were your biggest strengths and weaknesses? 5. Why did you leave that job? This last question is critical. You're trying to figure out if they were pushed out or pulled to a better opportunity. Players are almost always pulled. They're so valuable that their old boss is sad to see them go, and a new opportunity comes looking for them. B and C players are often pushed out, sometimes subtly, because they aren't performing. The book's rule of thumb is powerful. Don't hire anyone who has been pushed out of 20% or more of their jobs. Throughout this interview, your job is to get curious. For every answer they give, you follow up with 3 simple words: what, how, or tell me more. This is how you get past the polished resume speak and uncover the real patterns of their career. And the stories that come out can be astonishing. The authors tell of interviewing a candidate for a CEO role. When they asked why he left a previous job as VP of sales, he said he had a quote, 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 quote. They got curious. What happened? The candidate explained that in a board meeting, his CEO, under pressure for missing sales targets, said, "If we don't hit our number next quarter, we'll have to get a new VP of sales." The authors asked, "What did you do?" "Well," the candidate said, "I looked him in the eye and said, 'You know what? Your mother had a lot of foresight when she named you.'" The authors were stunned. What was his name? His given name was Richard, but he went by the common nickname. The board thought it was hilarious. Richard did not. He fired the VP on the spot. But the story gets worse. The authors asked what he said when he was fired. The candidate replied, "I told him, 'Your problem is nobody's ever put you in your place.'" The CEO shot back, "Who's going to do it? You." The candidate smiled, "I hit him." It was an open-handed slap across the face. A $3 million slap, he called it, because it cost him all of his stock options. Now, without the Who interview, would that story ever have come out? Not a chance. This is the power of a chronological deep dive. It reveals patterns of behavior, both good and bad, that predict future performance with incredible accuracy. After the Who interview, you bring in other team members for the third type of interview, the focused interview. This is where you have your colleagues dig deeper into specific outcomes and competencies from the scorecard. For example, one person might conduct a 45-minute interview just on the candidate's ability to build a team, while another focuses on their strategic thinking. This allows you to gather more data and gives your team a stake in the hiring process. Finally, there's the reference interview. This isn't a pointless formality. This is where you verify the data you've collected. You don't just call the references the candidate gives you. You call the bosses they mentioned in the Who interview. And you ask them the same kinds of questions. What were their biggest strengths? What were their biggest areas for improvement back then? That little phrase, "back then," makes it easier for references to be candid. You also test what you learned. You can say, "The candidate mentioned that he struggled with being disorganized in that job. Can you tell me more about that?" This gives the reference permission to open up, and often the rest of the story comes tumbling out. After these 4 interviews, you have a mountain of facts. Now, you and your team come together to make a decision. You take out the scorecard, and you grade the candidate on every single outcome and competency. You look for the skill-will bullseye. Does the candidate have the skill to achieve the outcomes? And do they have the will, the motivation, and cultural fit to thrive in the role? If you are 90% confident on both fronts, you have found your A player. But you're not done yet. Finding an A player is one thing. Getting them to join your team is another. This brings us to step 4, sell. Losing your perfect candidate at the last minute is heartbreaking. The authors say selling isn't a one-time event. It's a process that happens throughout the hiring journey, but it intensifies once you decide to make an offer. They break it down into the 5 F's of selling: fit, family, freedom, fortune, and fun. Fit is the most important. This is where you connect the dots for the candidate. Here is our company's mission. Here are the outcomes we need to achieve. And here is why your unique talents are the perfect fit to help us get there. You're showing them they are the missing piece of the puzzle. Family acknowledges that a job change is a life change. You need to sell the candidate's entire family. What are their concerns? If it's a relocation, show them the best schools, the best neighborhoods. The authors tell a wonderful story about a candidate whose family was hesitant to move to Austin, Texas. The CEO's assistant put together a care package that included a video of families water skiing on the local lake and 2 cowboy boots stuffed with tequila and concert tickets. The family was sold, and the candidate accepted. Freedom is about autonomy. Players hate being micromanaged. You need to sell them on the fact that you will trust them, give them space to operate, and judge them on their results, not on how they get there. Fortune is about the financial package. But it's not just about salary, it's about showing them the long-term financial upside. The best way to do this is to link their compensation directly to the outcomes on their scorecard. When you achieve these results, you will earn this reward. It aligns everyone's interests. And finally, fun. Work should be enjoyable. You need to sell them on the culture, the people, and the environment. You want them to feel that this is a team they will genuinely love being a part of. By focusing on the 5 F's that matter most to that specific candidate, you can overcome their concerns and seal the deal. One of the most inspiring stories in the book is about Bill Koch, an oil and gas magnate who decided to compete in the 1992 America's Cup, the world's most prestigious sailing race. He wasn't the best sailor. His team was a massive underdog. Vegas gave them 100-to-1 odds against winning. But Koch knew something about building teams. He created the equivalent of a scorecard for every position on the boat, focusing on 3 things: talent, teamwork, and attitude. He rated every sailor on a 1 to 10 scale. He ended up cutting 2 of the best sailors in the world because they had a bad attitude. He understood that a toxic superstar is not an A player. He then organized the team to minimize each person's weaknesses and maximize their strengths. The guy who couldn't dribble on his college basketball team was told, "You don't dribble, you set screens and get rebounds." Koch applied the same logic to his sailing crew. Each person had a highly specialized role they were exceptional at. In the final race, they were neck and neck with the heavily favored Italian team. As they approached the finish line, an eerie calm came over the boat. Every single person was focused on their one job, executing it flawlessly. They crossed the finish line 44 seconds ahead. They had done the impossible. Bill Koch didn't win because he was the best sailor. He won because he was the best at finding the right who. He built a team of A players, each perfectly suited for their role, and they achieved something far greater than the sum of their parts. This is the promise of the A method. It's not just a process for hiring, it's a philosophy for building winning teams. It's a shift from focusing on endless what problems to solving the one who problem that matters most. Get the who right, and the what takes care of itself. And you might just get to take that vacation after all. When you step back and look at the message of who, it seems almost deceptively simple: hire good people. Of course, everyone knows that. But the genius of this book isn't in the what, it's in the how. It takes a vague, anxiety-ridden process that most of us muddle through with gut feelings and guesswork and transforms it into a clear, disciplined, and repeatable system. What I find most powerful is the foundational idea of the scorecard. It's a profound shift in thinking. So often, we start hiring with a fuzzy idea of what we need. We think, I need a marketing person, or I need a project manager, but what does that actually mean? By forcing you to define the mission, and, more importantly, the specific measurable outcomes, before you even look at a single resume, the scorecard changes the entire game. It acts as your North Star, guiding every decision that follows. It's the difference between building a house with a detailed architect's blueprint versus just starting to nail some boards together and hoping for the best. This idea extends far beyond the corporate world. Think about it in your own life. When you start a group project for school, do you just divide up the work, or do you first define what an A- plus final product looks like? When you're looking for a partner in life, are you just hoping to meet someone nice, or do you have a clear idea of the mission, outcomes, and values that define a successful relationship for you? The scorecard is a life tool, not just a business tool. The second big lesson for me is the relentless focus on gathering facts over feelings. The Who interview in particular is a masterclass in behavioral science. The idea that past performance is the best predictor of future performance isn't new, but the chronological method for uncovering it is brilliant. It turns an interview from a performance, where the candidate is on stage, into a biography, where they are simply telling their story. And in the telling of that story, the patterns, the repeated successes, the recurring failures, the way they talk about bosses and teams, become impossible to hide. It's a system for seeing the truth. The world today tells us to move fast, to trust our intuition, to make quick decisions. And sometimes, that's good advice. But who reminds us that when it comes to people, slowing down is the fastest way to get where you want to go? Taking 3 hours for a Who interview feels like an eternity in our busy world. But when you compare that to the hundreds of hours and the emotional drain of managing a bad hire, it's one of the best investments you could ever make. So how can you apply this? Starting today, you don't need to be a CEO. First, create a scorecard for yourself. What is the mission for your life right now? What are the 3 most important outcomes you want to achieve this year? And what are the core competencies, the values and behaviors that will help you get there? Getting that clarity is the first step to becoming your own A player. Second, start practicing the sourcing mindset. The next time you meet someone impressive, someone you admire, don't just let the moment pass. Ask Patrick Ryan's question: who are the most talented people you know? Start building your own personal network of talent. You never know when you'll need it. Finally, get curious. The next time you're in a conversation where someone makes a general statement, "It was a great project," or "It was a tough situation," don't just nod. Ask, "What made it great? How was it tough? Tell me more." Practice digging for the facts beneath the surface. This is the core skill of the A method, and it's a skill that will make you wiser in every area of your life. That was a summary of Who, the A Method for Hiring, by Geoff Smart and Randy Street. We've covered the essential framework today, but I have to be honest with you. A summary can only ever be a map. It can't replace the journey of exploring the territory for yourself. The real power of this book is in the small details, the dozens of stories, and the practical step-by-step guides that bring these concepts to life. This summary is designed to give you the tools to decide if this book deserves your time. If anything we've discussed has sparked a sense of recognition or possibility in you, I encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning a new technique. It's about fundamentally changing the way you build teams and, ultimately, the way you build your future. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to click that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Thank you for joining me, and let's continue to grow together.